The text message sent by Christina Biffle, "We're in trouble," told the world the what. They knew they were going down. But today, we are going to answer the why. Why did a modern Cessna Citation jet, flown by a NASCAR legend and a professional aviator, fall out of the sky like a stone just moments after takeoff? Why did a machine built to fly on one engine fail to bring them home? The answer does not lie in the wreckage. It lies in a decision made in a split second. A decision made while adrenaline flooded the brain and alarm screamed in the ears. It is a maneuver so seductive yet so dangerous that aviation instructors have a grim name for it. They call it the impossible turn. In the aftermath of the tragedy that claimed Flight N257BDW, the aviation community is divided. Some say it was a mechanical catastrophe. Others point to the pilot. But to understand the truth, we must strip away the fame of Greg Biffle. We must strip away the emotion. And we must look at the cold, unforgiving laws of aerodynamics. In this special update, we step into the flight simulator. We reconstruct the final moments of Flight N257BDW with forensic precision. We analyze the NASCAR Reflex, the muscle memory that saves you on a racetrack but kills you in the clouds. And we ask the hardest question of all. If they had made a different choice in that chaotic cockpit, could they still be alive today? To understand why this crash happened, you first have to understand the economy of flight. Flying a jet is like managing a bank account. You have two currencies: speed, kinetic energy, and altitude, potential energy. When Flight N257BWW took off from Statesville, it was heavy. It was full of fuel. It had 4 passengers. In this state, the aircraft is energy poor. It has very little altitude, only about 500 feet above the ground when the trouble started, and it had just enough speed to climb. Then, the critical failure happened. We believe, based on the NTSB preliminary data, that the right engine failed. In a twin-engine jet, losing an engine doesn't mean you fall. The Cessna Citation II is certified to climb on one engine. But, and this is a massive but, it can only do so if the pilot flies it perfectly. When you lose an engine, you lose 50% of your power, but you lose more than 50% of your performance. You lose closer to 80% of your climb capability. Why? Because the remaining engine now has to carry the entire dead weight of the aircraft, plus overcome the drag of the failed engine, which is now acting like a giant air brake. At this moment, the pilot's energy bank account is near zero. You cannot afford to spend any energy. But a turn is expensive. To turn an airplane, you must bank the wings. When you bank, you divert some of your lift sideways to pull the plane around. That means you have less lift fighting gravity. To compensate, you must pull back on the yoke. This increases drag. This costs speed. Greg Biffle's plane was at 500 feet. They attempted to turn back to the runway. In doing so, they wrote a check that their physics bank account couldn't cash. They spent speed they didn't have to buy a turn they couldn't afford. Most people think that to return to the runway you just took off from, you simply make a U-turn, a 180-degree turn. That is a fatal misconception. If you take off and turn exactly 180 degrees, where do you end up? You don't end up on the runway. You end up flying parallel to it, offset by the diameter of your turn, usually about half a mile or more to the side. To actually get back to the pavement, you have to fly a complex shape. It's called the teardrop return. You have to turn 45 degrees away from the runway first, then turn 225 degrees back towards it. Or, you pull a tight 270-degree turn to intercept the center line. Think about the geometry. This isn't just a turn, it's a series of maneuvers. And Flight N257BW was in the clouds. They couldn't see the runway. They were flying on instruments, with a failed engine, trying to solve a complex geometric problem in three-dimensional space while the ground was rushing up to meet them. The NTSB data shows they initiated a left turn. But to make that turn radius tight enough to hit the runway from only 500 feet up, you need a steep bank angle. 30 degrees isn't enough. You need 45, maybe 50 degrees of bank. Here is the trap. As your bank angle increases, your stall speed increases. In level flight, the Citation might stall at 90 knots. Bank it to 60 degrees, and that stall speed jumps to 130 knots. They were likely flying around 140 knots. As they tightened the turn to find the runway they couldn't see, they raised the floor of the stall speed until it met their actual speed. And when those two numbers meet, the wing stops flying. This brings us to the most controversial aspect of this investigation, the NASCAR paradox. Greg Biffle is a legend, a world-class driver with reflexes sharper than 99% of the population. But could those very reflexes have worked against him? Neuroscience tells us that under extreme stress, like an engine explosion, the brain bypasses the logical frontal cortex and reverts to the reptilian brain. It reverts to muscle memory. Greg Biffle has spent decades controlling machines at 200 miles per hour. His muscle memory is wired for a car. In a race car, if the rear end slides out, a condition called oversteer, what do? You countersteer. You turn the steering wheel into the slide. If the car slides right, you steer left. It saves your life on the track. Now, place that brain in a cockpit. The right engine fails. The aircraft yaws violently to the right. The right wing drops. It feels exactly like a car spinning out. The racer's reflex screams, countersteer, fix the slide. The instinct is to jam the yoke to the left, using the ailerons to lift that dropping wing. But aerodynamics is cruel. When an airplane is near a stall, using the ailerons does the opposite of what you expect. If you turn the yoke left, the aileron on the right wing goes down. This increases the angle of attack on that wing. Instead of lifting the wing, it stalls it deeper. This is called a cross-control stall. The plane doesn't level out. It snaps over the top. It flips inverted. It is the aviation equivalent of overcorrecting a slide and slamming into the wall. We don't know for certain if Greg was handling the controls or if it was Dennis Dutton. But we know that in a crisis, instinct is faster than training. And if the instinct was to drive the plane out of the slide, it was a fatal error. There is another layer to this tragedy: cockpit hierarchy. We had two qualified pilots. Greg Biffle, the owner, the legend, likely in the left seat, captain's seat. Dennis Dutton, the professional manager, in the right seat. In professional aviation, we have a strict protocol called positive exchange of flight controls. One pilot says, "You have controls." The other replies, "I have controls." But in a sudden emergency with a close friend and owner of the plane, does that protocol hold? Imagine the engine bangs, the plane lurches. If Greg was flying, did he try to fix it? Did Dennis hesitate to grab the yoke from his boss? Or did they both try to fly at the same time? The ntsb data shows a moment of hesitation, a waver in the vertical speed. That hesitation is the signature of confusion. At 180 knots, 3 seconds of confusion eats up a quarter of a mile. That quarter mile was the difference between having room to maneuver and hitting the trees. And let's not forget the fog. They were in instrument meteorological conditions, IMC. When the plane started to bank, their inner ears, the vestibular system, would have lied to them. This is called the somatogravic illusion. As the plane accelerated into the turn, their bodies would have felt like they were pitching up, climbing too steep. The instinct is to push the nose down, to dive. Combined with the stall, this created a death spiral that no human pilot could recover from at 500 feet. Now, let's run the simulation. We will look at two timelines, the one that happened and the one that could have saved them. The right engine fails, the aircraft yaws right. The pilot inputs left rudder and heavy left bank to return to the airport. The bank angle exceeds 45 degrees. The stick shaker activates, the warning of an impending stall. Instead of leveling the wings to reduce the load, the pilot pulls back harder to keep the nose up. The left wing, moving faster on the outside of the turn, generates lift. The right wing, moving slower on the inside, stalls completely. Snap roll. The horizon spins 180 degrees. The aircraft is now inverted, nose down, 300 feet above the ground. Impact. Total destruction. Survivability, 0. Now, let's reset. The right engine fails. The pilot recognizes they are too low to turn back. He makes the terrifying decision to land straight ahead. He pushes the nose down to maintain 120 knots. He keeps the wings level. He sees the tree tipstone of the North Carolina forest rushing up in the fog. He doesn't try to climb over them. He accepts the crash. The aircraft hits the canopy. The wings are ripped off by the trunks. This sounds horrific, but physically, it is salvation. The destruction of the wings absorbs the kinetic energy. The fuselage acts as a survival capsule, sliding through the mud and brush. The G-forces are longitudinal, pushing them back into their seats, not vertical. The cockpit remains intact. Fire is a risk, yes. But in similar crashes throughout history, survival rates for this type of controlled flight into terrain exceed 60%. They might have walked away broken, but they would have walked away. Why didn't they choose scenario B? Why did they choose the deadly turn? Because of human nature. The FAA has studied this for decades. They call it the turn-back maneuver. Statistics show that for a single engine failure on takeoff, attempting to return to the runway carries a fatality rate 8 times higher than landing straight ahead off airport. Yet, pilots keep doing it. Why? Because the runway represents safety. It represents home. The trees represent danger. It takes a superhuman level of discipline to fly a perfectly good airplane into a forest on purpose. It goes against every instinct of self-preservation. But in aviation, your instincts are often wrong. Greg Biffle was a man who spent his life avoiding crashes. On the track, you never give up on the car. You fight it until it stops. In the air, sometimes you have to sacrifice the machine to save the soul. Tragically, the fighter spirit that made him a champion on the ground may have been the very thing that doomed him in the air. As we wait for the final NTSB report in 26, which will confirm the technical details, the lesson for us today is clear. The tragedy of Flight N257B is not just about a broken engine. Engines break. It is about the merciless physics of the impossible turn. It is a reminder that gravity does not care if you are a legend. It does not care how many races you have won. It only respects airspeed and altitude. The text message, "We're in trouble," was a goodbye. But it was also a testament to the fact that they were fighting until the very end. They didn't give up. They just ran out of sky. For the aviation community, this crash will be studied for generations. It will be taught in flight schools as the ultimate example of why, when the engine quits low to the ground, the only way to live is to go straight. This has been an expert analysis update on the Greg Biffle crash. We will continue to follow the NTSB investigation and bring you the final report when it is released. Until then, fly safe. Keep your airspeed up. And keep the blue side up.